And then there's few other questions that are incredibly helpful to ask ourselves and to know. I don't know how many of you have heard of Peter Drucker or maybe have read this book, but it's a book that I highly recommend. It's called Managing Oneself by Peter Drucker. He talks about, the things that we should know about ourselves, and then how after a certain age, we're gonna plan a second career, which he calls it almost like a transition, a second career, and the things that we should know. So there's few questions that he asked in the question that I personally have found very helpful. And I'm going to share just each question here, and maybe I'll ask for feedback from some of you. The first is, am I a reader or a listener? Do anyone of you know if you're a reader or a listener?
Reader.
Reader, okay. Who was that? Was that me?
That was Kirk.
Oh, Kirk, okay. Anyone else?
Listener.
I'd like to say, yep. Same.
Reader, okay. Am I the
Listener.
only listener? Oh, listener, okay.
Yep, listener.
It's interesting. I have a question for you. Like, I started reading, I started listening to audiobooks. And that's actually what helped me realize I'm actually a listener. I would rather just listen because I can pay attention than read. And eventually I realized that I actually learn more if I listen than read. How did you know whether you were a reader or a listener? Was there like an assessment or just an exploration and just finding out?
I think for me, it's I'm most comfortable listening to people. I tend to be much more of an active listener, so I actually learn that way as well.
Oh, I see. Okay, cool. Thanks. Yeah, and I agree with you, Alyssa. Of course, we're kind of like a combination. We might be more lenient towards listener or a reader, but I do agree with you. I design learning programs, and I'm just like, you're gonna have to have multiple ones to get. So have some sort of reading, have some sort of listening aspect so people can learn more. So I'm with you on that we are a combination of those. The second question that he recommends we ask ourselves is, do I learn by reading or by writing? Now, a lot of people swear by writing when you want to get clarity, and just reading. A lot of people use, including myself, writing to just get more clarity and get the thoughts from my mind and read that. Anyone else? Do you know if you're a reader or? Apologies, I'm in the room, and when I sit down, the light thinks that there's no one here, so I have to just stand up and wave. All right, so anyone else also know if writing versus reading, any impact on you? More clarity by writing or clarity by?
I tend to be both.
Okay. I'm curious, Ron, what about you?
Well, I'm thinking, since I only write when there's something I need. I can't think of anything I'd write for learning purposes other than taking notes. So I guess I would say I don't learn by writing.
I see. Okay. Alisa?
Yeah, I think that I read by, I learn by reading, but sometimes writing, like taking notes, reinforces.
Yeah. Go ahead. Was it Deborah? Were you going to say something? Yeah, so my theory of learning has actually evolved over time. In a sense, I used to just listen to learn. And then eventually I'm like, okay, if I cannot summarize and write it, and again on social media, when I learn something and I'm like, okay, can I share it with someone else? Because that's the only way I would know if I've actually understood the concept and I'm able to share it with someone else. The minute I start to write it, I would realize whether I learned or not. And so I found over time that I actually learned by sharing. But I say by sharing because that forces me to write what I kind of studied. So again, it's very helpful, but good to know, because eventually what self-leadership is about really designing what it is that we want to do and what we're good at. And so really finding out, okay, this based on my strength and knowing that this is how I learn, this is the exact job for me, and I'm going to either get that job or create that job, as some of the business owners have done. And then the other question is, do I work well with people or am I a loner? Some people prefer to work on their own. Some people prefer to work with other people. And I've always said this, leadership is not for everyone. In a sense that some people, anyone, by the way, anyone, if they want to be a great leader, they can be a great leader, because leadership is a learned skill. We're not born with the leadership skills. However, not everyone has to be a leader, right? Some people, if they're not interested in being a leader, then they don't have to. Unfortunately, a lot of organizations didn't have a career path for those who just wanted to remain an individual contributor. So the next logical transition for most people from being an individual contributor, if they want to grow in terms of financially or career-wise, was just to get to management. And that's the reason we have a lot of problem in management, is that a lot of people who are not even interested in being a leader are in leadership positions. Fortunately, some companies have alternatives now. They really ask people, do you want to pursue the leadership path, or do you want to grow as an individual contributor and then get to an expert level and a thought leader? And they would have a career ladder that does not involve leadership for them. So that's great. But it's really key to know if we're interested or not, because some people work great as leaders. Some people actually work great as a subordinate or as a follower. And some people are coach, others are mentors, some people are advisors, and some people are executive. They just want to execute things. And so really knowing who we are is great in terms of us pursuing that career that we want. But at the same time, also when we know what we are good at, or what we know what we prefer, we can surround ourselves whose skills and strength are the ones that we lack. So if you're someone who is a leader, who is envisioning, and an advisor, it might be great to work with someone who they don't really want to think about the vision, they just want to execute, right? So that would be a great match. So really knowing who we can collaborate with, who we want to hire if you have your own organization, or who you want to work with even in a career level.